well, the costly cleanup right now after tornadoes blow through the South and the Midwest. Experts are predicting more dangerous storms ahead. Now, could that be a dangerous forecast for our markets as well? Good morning, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto. Let's get the bottom line from all my buddies, including Charles Payne and Adam Lashinsky and David Nelson, along with Pat Powell and Peter Schiff. Tracy Burns will be back next week. She flew on an American plane and hasn't been heard from since. It's actually true, but we'll tell you about that next week. Well, Peter, despite a rough Friday, stocks are still up this young spring. You afraid all the catastrophic weather is going to knock them down all over again, or what?
Well, they're going down regardless of the weather. But, you know, with a nation with nothing saved for a rainy day, you know, we have to hope for perpetual sunshine. The last thing we need is to have to deal with the costs of trying to repair damages from natural disasters. And, you know, there's a lot of people that espouse the broken window theory of economics. They say, well, a natural disaster is good for the country because we have to repair what's been damaged. But all that does is take resources away from creating new wealth, and simply we have to use it to replace what was lost.
What do you think of that, Charles?
I disagree. I mean, whoever's replacing the window...
Have you ever agreed with Peter?
We agreed on something once. I forgot what it was.
Right. Go ahead.
You know, but the reality is that, okay, if someone replaces a window, they get paid for it. The manufacturer of the window gets paid for it. You know, whoever drove the window panes to the site get paid for it. You know, the stock market doesn't react to natural disasters and hurricanes the same way it would for, say, 9/11, because it is seen as an act of God. You know, so taking away all of that. I mean, Katrina is a prime example. Obviously, we had that little bit of a bump, but the Dow went from 9,600 to 14,000 in 2 years.
Well, I think we should take a big step back here, Neil. First of all, I'll make two predictions. The first one is that the experts will not be right on whatever they expertly predict for the hurricane season. You know,
well, you're right about that.
They say 12 to 15. You know, maybe it'll be 18, and
I'm saying 2 and some
maybe
drizzle.
It'll be 2. Right. Yeah, exactly. But here's my second prediction: if there's any inclement weather this summer, there will be many public company CEOs who will get on their earnings calls and say, the weather did in our quarter, that's why we didn't perform well. Of course, that's rubbish, but that's exactly the way it works. It will, if they have a bad quarter, it'll hurt their stocks. It's almost never because of the weather.
What do you make of that, Pat?
You know what? I think he's right. I think our economy and our markets weather these storms all the time. Whether you look at Camille in '69 or Andrew in '92 or Katrina, despite the economic chaos that seemed to have been caused by Katrina, when you look at the market, and I was a little more myopic when I looked at the market.
Hey. Watch the kind of words you're using.
You put Adam next to her, look what happened.
Myopic.
Katrina was from the 23rd of August through the 30th. On the 22nd, the Dow closed at 10,569. A month after Katrina was over, it closed at 10,568. It lost a point.
Here's where I'll try to distinguish here, and that is, Dave, that we are seeing certainly more of these storms. Now, whether the Hurricane Center, whoever made these predictions for a gazillion
but the
storms
problem
is right.
again is...
I will get you, Peter, in a second. Do you think that if we have a lot of them, as we have already with the tornadoes, that this does get to be something, hey, this is much, much bigger than we appreciate?
I have to agree with that. Look, Peter's over the top for sure, as he always is. But we don't want to go past the tipping point. Look, we're struggling at best to deal with an economic event of my career. And you have a weak consumer. GE's numbers yesterday were horrific. Retailers' numbers last week. Anything that slows down the recovery is just going to exacerbate an already bad situation.
All right. Now, Peter, the argument could be, as Charles touched on, that all of this destruction means construction down the road, and that is good for the economy and good for the people affected in those areas.
Well, not at all, because we're replacing assets that we used to have. But you have to remember, we don't even have the money saved. We have to borrow it from the Saudis or the Chinese. And in Charles's example, sure, if you have to write a check to the guy that replaces your window, that means you don't have money maybe to buy a new suit. So now your tailor goes without money. You know, if you think that you can create economic wealth by breaking windows, then go smash all the windows.
I don't know. Hold on.
Go ahead.
Or maybe you're the guy who was out of a job who actually is a construction worker.
But it puts somebody else out of a job.
It's a positive, Charles. How do you turn it into a positive?
Well, I'm saying the stock market's turning into a positive. Not me, it's historic.
I know, it's not. Yesterday to me.
You can go from, well, one day we're talking about. Listen, you could look at even take wars, for example, Pearl Harbor, 9/11.
They don't help the economy.
Of course they do.
No, they don't. That's nonsense,
they're normal.
Charles.
They're absolutely normal. We get
they
rain
cost
every
money.
year.
Well,
We get
the
storms
fact is,
every
Pat,
year.
I actually did a little research for the show, unlike prior shows, and this is a record tornado season. In fact, the tornado damage we've had thus far is apparently worse than the last 3 years combined. I don't know how truthful that is, but that's what I've heard. So if you argue we've seen more tornadoes, more natural-type disasters, on top of, as Adam said, this forecast for a bad hurricane season, I agree, you have to, with a grain of salt. Is that problematic?
Well, it could be problematic, but I want to dispute with you a little bit, if you don't mind.
No, I'm the host.
Oh, okay.
Charles is fine. Adam, open season.
You may be right about the tornadoes. You notice I'm ignoring you. You may be right about the tornadoes, but I checked with NOAA, and NOAA is the one.
Noah, the ARC guy.
Yes, and NOAA is the one who follows the weather, and they basically say that there's absolutely no discernible pattern or no discernible change in the amount of storms that hit land in the last 100 years.
Look, let's just, Neil, let's just try to apply some common sense to this. If it's a bad season and we are in the situation that we're in, and I'm worried about agreeing too much with Hurricane Peter over there, but it's not good. We have a lot.
Hurricane Peter's been right.
Correct.
We have a lot of negative forces in the economy right now. If we had a worse than average storm season, it's difficult to argue that that would help just about anyone. The key difference is that the markets, like people, are adaptable. So markets adapt. Now, I'm not agreeing with your point about creative destruction necessarily, but if one part of the country is hit, another part of the country typically picks up the slack.
Adam, don't you think that the market's looking ahead and been feeling good recently up until yesterday, looking ahead thinking that maybe the news is so bad that it's got to get better from here. But you know what? Sometimes the market looks ahead and sees a mirage. And 6 months later, investors are left drinking the sand, and that may be what we're looking at right now.
That's a trader mentality.
Were you in the movie Ishtar?
No, it's not a trader mentality. This is a serious
I didn't even say the word
event.
mentality. No. I'm talking about trying to determine what impact a hurricane season would have.
I agree with you, but I think that was a little off topic. But listen, you drive up to FDR, you're going to see 2 Yankee stadiums. One is going to be deliberately torn down by man. It could have been torn down by nature. It's called progress. It's called creative destruction.
All right. You know what? You're sitting nearer to them this week. And you're staring.
But they have a security guard right here.
They do. And he will deal with you. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. Calls for a boycott growing as the Olympics. The Olympic tour is on its way to Africa after running into a lot of protesters in South America. All of mayhem may have some U.S. sponsors running scared. Coca-Cola already cutting back some of its torch run events. Now more folks are calling for Coke and Nike, pretty much all the American sponsors, to completely pull out of the Summer Games in China. But would an Olympic boycott cause an Olympic-sized backlash on our economy? Let's go head-to-head to find out. David, what do you think?
You know, I'm against this type of thing. You know, we've done it in the past. It simply doesn't work. It's the
You mean the boycotts, like an 80 and then an 84?
Yes, correct. It's the wrong forum for this type of political protest. You know, this is a time we're supposed to come together as nations in the spirit of competition and sport. And from an economic standpoint, it simply doesn't make sense because as Americans, we want to be over there exporting the American way of life. And I don't want CEOs of major corporations where I'm a shareholder making a political statement with my money. If I want to make a political statement, I'll turn off the channel.
Well, they've made a political statement being there.
Well, they're making a political statement being there, but they're there to sell goods. That's what they're supposed to do. They're not supposed to be making a political statement.
They thought, in fact, that they weren't making a political statement, right? They thought they were selling sugar water and sneakers and what have you.
They are selling sugar water.
Here's the thing.
Yeah, but they knew they were doing games in China. I agree with what he's saying, but my point is that I don't know what this big fuss is now. I mean, the time to have started bitching was when China was awarded games, if you feel they shouldn't have gotten the games. I don't.
Well,
but I'm just saying that now everyone's, hey, you know, China is all this stuff. Well, the time for all of that was back when they were awarded the games, 6-8 years ago.
Well, tell the protesters that, right? So here's the thing. The situation has changed.
You just gave me attitude.
The situation changed in Tibet. We could, discuss why that happened, but that's not important. It changed. And that gave the protesters, the groups who want to shine a light on China's human rights situation, the opportunity to get the conversation going again. So it turns out that the Chinese government and some of these corporate sponsors miscalculated. They didn't realize that this...
So what do they do now?
of course, they stay in the games, and if they're smart, they find a way to say, we wish the Chinese would be better on human rights. I don't think this is going to have an impact on our economy in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you know, I think businesses are just about business, and they're not about making political statements. And the only time they run.
Well, do you think there's any fear of association here?
Well, there might be, but I think that American businesses are tripping over themselves to get at 1.3 billion Chinese consumers, not just today, but for the long haul.
I think you're right,
I think they're very concerned about insulting the Chinese and taking away faith, and they do not want to do that.
Exactly, because you have a choice of ticking off two groups of people here, the Chinese or the rest of the world.
Right. 25% of the population are scattered protesters around the world. You know, listen, I kind of disagree with you in the sense that China didn't miscalculate. They just don't care. I mean, the leadership of China,
they don't care.
They just don't give a damn. I don't care what you say. They don't care. They don't even care about the stuff that's going on. The games are going to go on. And to that degree, I think that's where the protesters are sort of making a mistake, because I think it's a shame that the Olympic torch, which should represent something else, had to go in the witness protection program. You know, yeah, really.
You're absolutely right about that. I was in San Francisco. I thought it was a shame. You know, it's a shame for the people who get excited about this. It's a shame for the athletes. I think you might be wrong. I think the Chinese might care. They are very excited about this being a big event for them to show the world how successful
Neil, do you think this would have happened in the political environment that we're in right now? It's an election year, and it's a populist message.
I think it would have happened any time.
Yeah, because you know what? It's happening in South America, Asia, Europe. It's happening all over the world. But you can't get away from the fact
that China is not a free country. China is a totalitarian country.
Well, we knew that when they got the Olympics. That's my only point. I'm not justifying behavior. And you're right to say that they've been beating up on monks lately.
80 years ago, I believe it was 80 years ago, we had Jesse Owens standing on a podium.
That's right.
In Nazi Germany.
That's right.
Were we supposed to not be there?
You're missing one of the major points here.
Go ahead, Peter.
You know, I mean, first, we got an Olympic-sized problem on our hands regardless. But, you know, China might be the only thing standing between America and the economic abyss right now. We got to be very careful how we treat the Chinese, what we say in front of the Chinese. They're the biggest buyers of our bonds, of our mortgage-backed securities. We're asked.
Well, Peter, they get something out of it too, right?
No, they don't.
Well, we buy a lot of their stuff.
No, of course they don't pay for it. We don't pay for it. They give us their stuff.
They give us their stuff.
It out yet. We're giving them little pieces of paper.
So, Peter, where did they get the money to buy our bonds if they're not getting any money from us?
No, they're recycling their earnings back into our stuff, but they're not getting any real products.
It's a symbiotic relationship. They have cheap labor and sell us cheap stuff.
Symbiotic, myopic. Where are we going with this?
It's not symbiotic if we don't export stuff to them.
Peter's actually making a good point. There is $500 billion of U.S. debt that is held by the Chinese.
We know that, but everyone who fears, they're going to pull the financial Armageddon button.
I don't fear it.
They're as much beholden to us.
Neil, they're not.
I don't fear it, but I do say.
Well, yes, they are to infinity, and I'm the host, and that's the end.
Neil, they're throwing good money after bad.
You can keep talking, Peter, but we're going to a break. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do, because I'm the host. All right, millions of tax refund checks are in the mail, and our money guys say, don't spend it, invest it. Stocks that'll have you laughing at the IRS next tax season. We know tax day is indeed Tuesday. Our guys are here to help you profit off of that refund check by investing in stocks and let you get more for your money. Patricia, what do you do?
Well, this may not appear to the connoisseurs on this panel, but I like Constellation Brands. Constellation Brands is the #1 wine company in the United States and in the world. And, good times or bad times, we're going to drink.
Yeah.
And so, and the best thing is that this is very cheaply priced. So I think it's a really good way to spend your refund check if you're lucky enough to get one.
If you're lucky to get one.
Let me tell you, I like those wines, though, because they have the screw-on tap. Yeah. Wine consumption has been up every year for the last 14 years, so I like where you're going. They had a good earnings report, but I just think it might be a little ahead of itself right now, that's all.
So what are you doing?
I like Big Lots. A little along the same line of thinking as Patricia, in the sense that, folks are going to get their money and look for something cheap. Cheap, big box stores all around the country, great earnings trends recently. I think a lot of people are going to go and spend their money there, their refund money.
Adam, what do you make of that?
It seems like every week I'm beating up on one of your stocks, Charles, and I think this is a good idea. I just think it's already had a nice comeback. It's already gotten a lot of what it's going to get. It's not a fast grower. It's not that expensive either.
All right. What are you doing?
You think taxes, you think Intuit. Intuit is taxes, and it's TurboTax and the Quicken books that small and medium-sized businesses use to manage their accounting because they can't.
I love Quicken, but I digress. Go ahead.
And here's the thing. Guess what? People are going to have to pay their taxes next year, too. They're going to keep buying this product, and because it's a technology software company. It's beaten down like all the rest of them, so it's inexpensive right now.
Dave, what do you make of that?
I'd be a little cautious with that. And by the way, I got rid of my Quicken.
Now you just do it in your head.
You know what? The banks are doing a better job with it. They're just doing a better job with it. They're sitting on the float.
You could have helped Elliot Spitzer. He wasn't too good tracking that, but go ahead.
Okay, well, my pick is H&R Block. Now, let me start off by saying this is not a great company, all right? But there's a distinct story. All right. Sometimes you can make some money with a Bow Wow stock like this, but Richard Breeden, one of the directors, last week bought 2 million shares on top of the 2.4 million. Just 2 weeks before that, he now has 10 million. I think this stock's going higher.
Peter Schiff, what do you think of that?
I think he's right. It's not a good stock, and I wouldn't buy it. A good part of their earnings comes from financial services. You want to stay away from that. And I think in the recession that's coming, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. They're not going to be filing tax returns, and those that still have their jobs will try to save money and do it themselves.
The ones who still want to live. Otherwise, it could be like the last stand. What are you doing, Peter?
Well, look, I've been buying the mining companies, the industrial miners for years. One that's lagged, that's underperformed, have been the aluminum stocks. I think they're good value there. I like Alumina. It's an Australian company. It has an ADR here. Alcoa owns 50% of it. It's got a 4% yield. I think the stock's going a lot higher. You can buy that with your refund check.
Pat, what do you make of that?
Well, I think there's some risk associated with this stock. It's one-dimensional. Aluminum happens to be the most abundant metallic element, and it's energy intensive to produce. So I think there's some risk associated with this one.
So aluminum is an element? I'm learning a lot.
Yes.
It's a myopic
Next week, we're bringing a whole periodic table.
The SAT class I missed. All right, when we come back, one stock ready to jump 60% and another one by 50%. Get those names after this. All right, back to go on the spot. Adam, what do you got?
Despite the fact, Neil, that I'm having a good week flying on American Airlines, I think by 2010 there will be 3 national airlines, down from 7 today if you count Southwest Airlines. This industry is just going to consolidate.
What life was like before deregulation.
And then you'll see the little airlines pop up again and reseed themselves, and we'll have a whole new airline industry, but not before some pain.
Wow. Dave.
Call me crazy, Neil, but Apple will be...
You're crazy.
All right. But Apple will be $250 a share by the end of next year, and it's not about the iPod, it's not about the iPhone. There's a sea change going on in computers. Either you use a Windows-based operating system or a Mac. Why would anyone want to buy anything other than a Mac where you can run Windows, Mac, and if that's not enough, both at the same time?
All right. Pat?
Everybody who goes grocery shopping knows that food is going through the roof. If you want to make money on this, you can be a professional farmer or you can buy Moo, M-O-O. It's an agribusiness exchange-traded fund.
Okay. Charles?
Up 50% in the next 2 years.
I still love the solar stocks, and one I like a lot is LDK Solar. It's a very volatile stock, so I'll let the folks at home know if you buy it, it's going to be volatile, not necessarily for the faint of heart, but up a minimum of 40% over the next year.
Over the next year?
Over the next year.
Interesting. Peter?
Well, they're mailing out these economic stimulus checks. It's not going to work. It's going to make the economy worse. That means Congress is going to pass an even bigger stimulus package before the election. All that means is more inflation. You got to keep buying gold, buy the pullback, buy GLD, the exchange-traded fund. We're back down to 900. We could be at 1,200 by the end of the year.
900 being the price of gold.
Right.
1,200 where you see it going.
Yep.
I see.
And then much higher after that.
How much higher?
Thousands. 5,000, maybe more.
Okay. All right, my thoughts on the spot, an observation really now. I think everyone's a Democrat. Now, there's anything wrong with that. But John McCain's for government, nosing in on this whole mortgage mess, just like Hillary and Barack. He's also for President Bush, boycotting the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games, just like Hillary and Barack. Look, my friends, I don't care where you stand on this issue, but big government is back. Big talk is too. Pretty much no matter who is doing the talking. I think that's where we're going, Chuck.
Absolutely. Barney Frank is in control of everything, and Bush should have been on your list as well, President Bush.
Incredible. Dave Asman.